Hi, I'm Andy, and took me a long time to get that name, but it was actually a name I used to call myself when I was a kid, and I used to record myself, on cassettes, and you put them in and you record off the radio, and you'd like talk in between and introduce. Well, that's how I used to play, and I used to call myself Andy. So that's how I ended up getting my name, and I use he/him pronouns. Um, that was also a little bit of a journey to get to that point as well. And I'm a social worker, and I work locally out here in beautiful Warkworth, Ontario. So I remember something that stood out to me, and it was when you end up going and talking to your doctor, or in my case, it's a nurse practitioner. They ask you, like, how did it all start? And tell me your trans journey. And I remember being in like grade 2 or 3, pretty young, and there was someone who came and presented to the gym, and the entire class, or the entire school actually, was there. And at some point, they had pointed out to me because I had my hand up, and they said, the boy in the purple shirt. And everyone started to laugh and tease me because they knew who I was. And I was a little girl with short hair, and had to beg my parents to get that haircut. Something that I really wanted, but that always stuck out to me, is the boy in the purple shirt. And it's enough for me to think about it now and for it to stick with me. I always thought there was something there. And I remember a little bit later on that year, my mom decided to paint my walls pink. And I don't know if she was sensing things. I just trying to keep things pink, and put your girl in little dresses and make sure that, they're following along like all the other little girls. But I got black paint and I put it all over my hands, and I like decorated the walls to let her know how I felt about her choosing pink for me. So very strong-willed, I think, at a young age. And sorry, Mom. I think they had to paint over that, or maybe they made me paint over it. I went to Catholic school, and I didn't have very many examples of people around me who were from the LGBT family. It wasn't really talked about very much. I had to go outside. Internet was a big thing, ICQ and all that good stuff when we were younger, and Messenger. And so I started talking to people in other areas. And I met my partner, who was from Oshawa. And she was going to be going to a dance in Toronto, to Buddies in Bad Times. It was a boys and boys and a girls and girls dance. And so that was the first time. We were 17 or 18, and then we dated for a little bit. We dated twice, but my partner, she was just coming out herself and interested in lots of girls, and I think girls were interested in her. And I can hear her laughing on the side, because she probably doesn't want me to tell you, but she dated a few different people. And I think I was young, but I wanted to just have one partner, and I wanted it to be her. And so I broke up with her twice. And then we went and we both married different people. We had a great time with both person. We learned a lot of different things, and learned how to be good people and better partners to one another. So I thank my last partner for everything that she taught me. And so then I was just looking for someone to be friends with, and I needed to learn how to crochet. So I put a post on Facebook, and I said, hey, is there anyone willing to teach me to crochet? And so she messaged me and said, I'd love to, and came over. And I think she had other things in mind, but I was innocent in all that, of course. She came over, and it was history from there. So that sort of started, I guess I went through being a lesbian phase, feeling I was a woman, and it wasn't until I was maybe 32 that I went to her and I said, listen, I think I'm a man and I don't know how you're going to take this. But she answered with such positivity and support and willing to listen and like, oh, well, you could try this, or you could go on hormones, or you could do this. And just knowing that there were some options opened up like a whole new world to me. I felt relief. I felt just in my mind a little bit of peace and like, oh my God, there's an opportunity that I can be who I am on the inside, that little boy in the purple shirt. So I think some of the challenges, a lot more came from coming out to family, and I've had some really supportive, strong people, and I've had some people really question it and ask awful questions that you wouldn't want to be asked, and people that you wanted to be there to support you and just say, okay, where do we go from here? And I've been told that I'm going to get beat up in a bathroom and maybe killed. People are worried. They're worried for me. But it's been a challenge. I think some people have said, like, why would you want to be a man? It's the worst thing in the world. And it's not a choice. It's not, I've had so many conversations about it. So it's challenging, just getting self-affirmation. But it's really funny because we have a foster daughter who lives with us. And when she first came, that was when I was starting to transition. I think it was like October when I started my hormones, and she came in November. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have a conversation with this kid. She's going to see me start growing facial hair. I wear different, not feminine clothes. And what is she going to think? Is she going to be embarrassed? Is she going to accept me? All those fun things. And so that got to happen at the same time that we're also creating an identity of who we were as parents. So it was a interesting time. Everything was combined. Some of it, I've been up against depression and felt oppressed when Danielle and I applied for an apartment and we got told we didn't get the apartment because we had bad credit, and we both have excellent credit. So it was obvious to me that we both showed up. I think I was looking pretty butch at the time, and they just didn't want people like us there. So there's been things like that. But when I get to a bathroom at this point, because I feel I'm pretty newly transitioning. I feel like, how boy do I have to look today to go into the men's bathroom versus, okay, if I'm in there, is it really busy? Or a lot of women going to see me? If my mask is covering, based on what I'm wearing, where do I fit that day? It's a struggle. I'm hoping that becomes clearer and clearer the more I feel like myself is matching with my outside physical appearance. But I'm a social worker, so my whole thing is you got to enjoy the journey. And this is who I am today, and that's okay. So this is Danielle. We've been together now for 8 years. Soon to be wife, I hope one day. We'll see. But I think we've passed what is it, like a 3-year mark normally?
Common.
Well, yeah. So Danielle is a nurse, and she's been an integral part of my life since I was very young. And then we stayed friends. We stayed friends for a good while we were off being married and doing all that kind of stuff. And so you've always been there. And I was always in love with her. I just wanted her to be with me, nobody else.
Yeah, I remember it quite clearly. We were living in Hamilton, and Andy had just come back from um, training and focusing providers, medical providers, about trans care and how to be inclusive. And I remember Andy came in and was just pale and didn't look good. And I said, is everything okay? Um, and he said, I think I'm trans. And I said, I kind of figured that before, but like, that doesn't change anything. And I think that was Andy's worry, is how is that going to change our relationship? Me identifying at that time as a lesbian in a lesbian relationship, how does that change the dynamics of things? And like, to me, it's, gender is a social construct, and, it's not about, that, I love Andy because of Andy, and Andy is trans, and I kind of, always knew that and always loved that about Andy, and yeah.
My cheeks go red sometimes. Yeah, I think we had a big conversation about going from a lesbian relationship to a cis relationship. And I also wondered, your sexuality, like I wasn't trying to change you in my decision.
Yeah.
And then you came out and you told me that you were what?
Yeah, I identify as non-binary. I never fit into any of the gender roles.
But not, was it pansexual you told me?
Yeah, but yeah, my attractiveness to a person is not to their gender. I don't believe that you can be attracted just to one gender.
So it was like I hit the jackpot.
It's
for me, I think I was even counseling someone at this point too who was coming out, someone, and didn't want to lose their partner, and said, I'd rather keep my partner than come out because that's more important to me. And that's sort of how I felt it. So Danielle had to be okay with it, and took a long time to tell her. And now I feel like I'm taking away her lesbian pride. Like, are we not part of that same, like all your friends are lesbians? You're in a different sort of status now, right?
It's kind of a strange position to be in because, for most of my life, I was very butch. I had my hair shaved for most.
Danielle was the one. Yeah.
I was definitely, and then our roles have kind of changed in a relationship where, I grew my hair out. Andy cut his hair off.
Danielle cuts my hair for COVID. She gave me this beautiful hawk.
Yeah.
Yes, it's my first mohawk.
So, it's, taking, you're not visibly queer anymore, I guess, is the thing, is that you kind of, so you think, where do I fit into I don't really fit into the lesbian or the queer visually. I still definitely feel like I fit into that.
See, I still think people see me as female when I walk around.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like, I think you're still visible at this point. I wear a lot of colorful stuff.
Yeah. It's, I think it is what it is.
But one day,
flow, right?
Yeah, one day I think it's going to be very, very different. I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to go full beard and lumberjack it up, I think.
It's hard because you've kind of gone through most of your visible transition during COVID. And
many people who come to me and do the, think I'm a ma'am, or and then say sir, and then say sorry. They look at me and they get confused. And yeah, I get a lot of sirs at first, I think, and then they look at me and then they second guess it and they apologize. So that's been happening quite a bit. Your family and my friends and like people who have known me, and my dead name transitioning to Andy and he, him, I think has been a challenge for some people.
Yeah.
I was really lucky. I was working at a place that there was someone who was non-binary, and I remember it being a transition for me. And then even in myself, calling myself Andy all the time, like I went through a transition with it as well. So I try not to, I don't react to people as much. I think if it happens, I hear it. I definitely hear it but I just let it be.
I think you take on that teacher role. I think that's who you are. And, formerly being a teacher, I think you still have those qualities where you want to teach people.
Sometimes I'll say something, but
yeah,
I feel like I'm trying to make it easy for people as well, but I shouldn't. Like everyone's like, you don't have to tell your story to everyone and teach the world. Like that's not my job. I shouldn't have to stop it because that's a lot to take on. But yeah, lately I think people will realize it themselves, and that'll be a bigger teacher because they'll feel embarrassed and they'll be like, oh, next time I'll do that.
I haven't seen you happier.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in terms of your mental health, it's definitely been.
Yeah.
I don't know what. But.
Yeah. I struggled from when I was a little kid. Like we came from a lower socioeconomic upbringing, I'd say. Like my parents were, blue-collared workers? Is that what you call them? And life was, you had what you needed always, but it wasn't always the nice, fancy things that everyone else in class had. And so it was rougher. It was harder. And I think around 17 or 18 and coming out, I struggled with my identity. I struggled with the sexuality, and a poor girl. I had slept with a girl for the first time, and I think a week later I ended up in the hospital. And she thought it was totally her, and it wasn't. But I just, I did a lot of years of counseling to help. And I'm in a really good place right now. And I think that it evened things out better. Like everyone struggles with their own mental health and just feeling more balanced within the day, starting hormones. I didn't expect that to happen. Just calmer, peaceful, right?
Yeah.
So we've had a struggle with family life, and I can see Danielle sort of welling up a little bit too. Like your eyes got glassy. We have always wanted to have children, both of us, and quite quickly in our relationship, I think realized that we'd be great parents and had good skill set that we could share, and tried a lot of routes. Like we went the fertility route, and we both struggled with weight at that time. Danielle's lost 50 pounds in COVID. She's doing excellent. But, we both had hard time getting pregnant. And then we thought, we're trying to work out, but like, is there anything we can do in terms of maybe adopting or fostering? Are you open to that? And we decided it didn't have to be our biological child. We had a lot of love to give to a child that needed it. Yeah. And so we decided to become adopt ready parents. We have to do pride training for that. That's what they call it. Mm-hmm. I always thought it was special. It must be for us. We waited how many years?
4 years.
4 years being ready and everything approved, and the ups and downs of like, you go to these events where they put kids' profiles out on tables, and it's like a meat market of places that you can, okay, I'm interested in that one, and then you're fighting with someone behind you. You're like, no, I'm going to be a better parent with that one because we're doctors. It was a horrible experience. So we finally got matched to one, and then right before they were supposed to start visits with us, I guess we got told that the foster parent wanted to keep the child, and they thought that was a better fit, so it didn't upset the attachment. And we grieved that because we knew the whole story. We knew what to expect. We were ready, and it was a loss, a big loss. And then we thought, okay, do we keep waiting? We're getting older. Like, I'm starting to get gray hairs now. Things are happening like that. And we thought, well, why don't we foster? If we foster, maybe we'll have an opportunity to then, if a child becomes available, then have them come permanently into our home, right?
Yeah. And I think it was important that we were upfront with them right away that you were trans and this was our family, and are they going to be accepting of that?
That's what will fit. Yeah, we couldn't have it with a kid that didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but kids are like sponges. They just eat up what you tell them, and like she started asking me, why do you wear boys' clothes? So we ended up fostering, by the way. And so we have a foster child now.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, why is your hair like that? And why are you wearing? She kept wondering why I was wearing certain clothes out to places.
Yeah.
And so we talked to her, and I said, like, this is how I feel most comfortable. This is who I am and how I want to express myself. And I hope you want me to feel comfortable and happy to do that. And she was like, of course.
And I think even before we had told her, or kind of explained it to her about Andy being trans, she right away asked Andy, can I call you Dad? Is it okay if you can be my dad?
Oh, melted my heart.
And this was pretty early on when she was here.
Yeah.
So, I think, kids know a lot more than they can pick up on things.
Like,
and
she, on Father's Day, she drew me a little picture, and she can barely spell. Like, she's challenged in her spelling, but she can affirm my gender.
Sure.
She gave me like little stubble and a mustache and like amazing, what more can you ask for? So I'm going to hold on to that picture forever. I think.
Yeah.
That was good. Cause I was nervous. I didn't know how she would take it.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's been pretty amazing. I feel awkward going to her Catholic school sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
And just all the other parents, and like, oh, that's the kid.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do that, but I think about that.
Yeah. We worry about those kind of things.
So,
especially in a Christian organization that is not too accepting of.
Well, they wouldn't put the flags on, and yeah. So when you foster, you don't get a choice as to where the child goes, because there was a really nice school right around the corner that she could have gone to. But so we'll see. We just found out today, actually, that she might be leaving us. Like right before you came, we got a letter that it's a possibility. We're gonna find out. So we're in a limbo. So our hearts have been flipped, turned.
Yeah.
Excitement. She's coming. I remember waiting at the door the day she was coming and staring out the window. You couldn't get me away from the door.
Yeah.
I was so excited.
But
yeah.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah. So we have family in a different way, and it's not the traditional way that we experience family or the schema that you were brought up with.
Yeah.
And I think that was the trouble too. Like when I tried to take a leave from work and met with some trouble there, and being told that like we weren't parents. Like they quoted, "You are not parents. You do not get the leave." So challenges. That was a big challenge.
Yeah.
Come to think of it.
And being treated differently, like you're going off on this leave to take care of a child, and everybody else when they were going off in that leave, they got
a present,
and a party, and then you were kind of, there was a meeting planned right at the end, and you thought,
yeah, there was a meeting, and I thought everyone was going to be there because it was online. COVID had started, and it was just my boss checking in on how much work I did that day.
And that disappointment that, a week earlier, someone went off on that leave and got this whole big party with a drive-by.
I donated to that. Not that I needed a present. I don't mean that, but it's the whole, when you're a manager, you're fair to everyone and you include. So I felt very othered.
Yeah.
And then being told that I couldn't have the leave. And then it was like October, like I asked before she had come to our home. And it wasn't until February when I got approval to be off for 35 weeks. Mm-hmm. So they find, like, it took months and months. So think of every day not knowing if you have to go back to work or like what's going to happen with your kid or how are you going to, now you got to get childcare. It was like very hectic and like emotionally draining.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, just now being asked if we're interested in putting forth any intent to adopt, that puts us in a totally different, it's this fine line from the governments through the ESA. And if you don't cross that border exactly, this boundary, you get all the, but that's, I said to them, like, this is how we have our family. This is how we tried to expand our family in other ways. And this is how we have to do it. And I need a leave to attach with my child, and they wouldn't give it to me. Yeah. It was a fight. That was a challenge. So you would expect them to be treating their employees, I think, with more respect with the laws that are, the legislature that's out there created by the same body. And I felt not treated that way too. And I think because I was just about to go on a transition, like start my transition, and I thought I can either go off on a leave, medical leave, because I didn't want to be in a place that I didn't feel comfortable, like it wasn't talked about compared to my other social work agencies that I worked at.
Which were very queer positive.
Yeah, and they, you'd go around the table at a meeting and you introduce your pronouns, and that was the way of things, but it was not like that at all. And so I didn't feel safe, just being on a team without some discussion and some, so I thought, okay, I'll either take a leave or choose the parental leave. And I talked to my union and they felt that it was better to take the parental leave, but then it was like, no, you can't have it. And then they said, well, you're already on this, because I had started. I said, I have to be off this day. The child's coming into my home, special needs, I have to be there. I think the great thing about our futures is that we know it'll be together because we both enjoy the same things. We're very outdoorsy and naturey, and that's why we wanted to live in a home with trees surrounding it and be able to have animals, like your little puppy that you got to hold, because she'll bark if we put her down, and have the chickens. Really love doing that. But I think just being somewhere where there's places to kayak, I think a house, like you make the home wherever you go. Mm-hmm. We'll be here for a few years. We have something that is strong. Found a house. We lived in Hamilton, I guess, was our first house, and moved here and bought something that was half done. So we've been putting little bits and little bits into it and building it. It's sort of, do you feel like, what?
Block by block.
Block by block. But like each project we do you feel more affinity towards the house?
Yeah.
And the land and just being here?
Yeah.
So
we're in a very supportive community. So, we're very
everything.
Lucky. Very privileged to be where we are today.
Yeah.
And
I think coming from such a hard place, going through, coming out as being gay and it not being accepted right away, and fighting for that. And then, I think a lot of people just thought I was nutty, because I was dealing with, being okay and finding that identity within myself. It's like going into a cave, and then you get to the back of the cave and there's a little crack, and you go through the crack and it opens up into another cave. And it took me a little longer than most people, I guess. I feel old, doing this, but you know, by the time I'm fully transitioned and feeling myself, I think I'll probably be bald, and it's part of it, right? I think we've come up with like a whole bunch of advice that we'd give others in terms of thinking, you know, just get talking to someone and sharing and not holding things in. I mean, you got to be ready. Because let's face it, there's still real true things that can be done to you, and consequences. So you want to be safe and make sure it's a safe person, but get talking to those people and realizing that there's others out there, that you're part of a community. It was really great about this project because when I was introduced to it and I started watching videos, there was 2 or 3 people that I've come in contact with. I used to work with Heidi in Peterborough, and I know Cash, and so it's great to feel like I'm part of a community. And everything I've been a part of, I know it's not the best place, but there's little Facebook groups that you can join, and people, anytime you need something, they're there for you. So it'd be great to get connected and feel supported. You told me I don't have to be anywhere yet. Like, I felt like I wasn't male, I wasn't female, I didn't fit this box or that box. And you said, like, why does there have to be a box?
Yeah.
And and not, you know, pushing yourself to fit into that yet.
I think your personality is very black and white. You struggle with the gray. Yeah.
Trying to find the gray.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there is such a thing as non-binary, isn't there? Right in the middle.
Weird.
In terms of all that stuff. My trans journey gets better with every step and every day and every moment to the place that I want to be. And I just want to encourage others to take those steps, to walk, to move. Don't stay stagnant. There's great things out there.